Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Vampires. A neonate approached me the other night, very presumptuous of her, to ask about 3 of the families of death. You see, when we talk about Clan Hecarta, it is of course known that we are in some ways a sect more than we are a clan. We are a congregation of orphans, all of us looking for a single family to belong. For a while, one family was in charge of the rest. Before then, a broader family or church was in charge of all. Now it is more an assemblage, a council of bickering voices, some coming from the corner of the Giovanni, others speaking for the harbingers. Sometimes you'll hear something from the swamp of the Samdi. Then the Moliners will start complaining all the way over in Boston. The Puttanesca will want a greater share in New York and New Jersey, and so on, and so on. This is how it goes. No Hecarta is living in perfect harmony with their neighbours, but you have to admit, as I do, that it is better to be in the tent pissing out than outside the tent pissing in. I think. Regardless, Thea, that's her name, came to me asking for some insights into some of our families, the Pisanob, the Samdi, and the Lamiae. Now, the 3 do not have masses in common with each other. The Pisanob and the Samdi sometimes are mistaken for each other, but that's more due to geographical locality and some of the Pisanob's unfortunate physical afflictions than due to their faith, their belief, their philosophy. The Lamiae, up until very recently, as is often the case with the descendants of Cappadocius, were believed extinct, eliminated, terminated by the Giovanni with extreme prejudice over the course of the second millennia. Well, it just so happens that a few of them survived, and now they are flourishing again under the banner of the Hecarta, because within the Hecarta, all families are protected, so long as you are not trying to sabotage the rest. It's a simple harmony. It works. It functions. Don't question it. Let's start with the Pisanob, as they were the first family asked after. And much like the Lamiae have recently stumbled upon hard times, I won't take credit or blame for this. I cannot speak for every harbinger of skulls. But the Pisanob did run afoul of some very hungry elders with vengeance on their minds, and the Pisanob didn't deserve to be targeted like this. I'll be the first to admit that that vengeance was misplaced, aimed at the wrong parties. But you know how it is. You emerge from the underworld after centuries locked away, and the first clan of death you recognize isn't one you recognize. They claim to be in league with the vampires who stole justice away from you. Well, sometimes you lose your temper, don't you? Sometimes you go on a widespread killing spree, and it just so happens that the first bloodline you find is the one that suffers the consequences. The Pisanob are still putting themselves back together again. But perhaps, and some of the harbingers like to maintain this, there was a reason for aiming at them. You see, while many of the younger Pisanob had absolutely no idea of the history of the clan, their eldest, Poshtli, very much did. Poshtli is an interesting figure, because you ask some Cainites and vampires never made it to the Americas until the conquistadors came along, and that is an utter nonsense, fallacy. Vampires were in the Americas just as long as they were in Europe and Asia and Africa and the rest of the world. No place was safe from us, especially given we have all possessed certain gifts at certain times to allow our travel, whether through the underworld, through the sky, through the earth. There are clans with gifts such as these. Poshtli had been present, however, in Central America, what is now Central America, the Yucatan Peninsula, for a long time before the Spaniards arrived. And he had embedded himself in what we now call the Aztec civilization, more accurately referred to as the Mexica, a people who had only recently sprung up as their own independent civilization, not recognized as such at the time. They were a coagulation, a coalescence of tribes of peoples who had in some cases betrayed their origins, who had travelled south to this rich and bounteous area, decided to set up their city in the middle of a fetid swamp, and otherwise burgeoned for a brief time. But Poshli was there even longer than that. And you see, the Harbingers, some of them, when they emerged from the underworld, they recognized Poshli. They recognized his words. They recognized his rituals. They observed him for a time. They recognized that he, in a previous life, you could say, was one of the Cappadocians instrumental in sealing away those Cappadocians not worthy. He was the right hand, the Praetorian, if you like, the Lucius Sejanus, there's a name, of the emperor. That is to say, that during the Feast of Folly, when so many Cappadocians were being banished, Poshli, under a different name, admittedly, was the one swinging the scythe, making the decision, you go to Kaimakli, you get to go free. And for some reason, after that period, he just vanished. He disappeared from the dark ages of Europe, and where did he appear? Well, in a different place, in Central America. Now, this isn't to say Poshli was not Aztec or Mexican or even from the region. It's quite possible he was. He's not around anymore to ask, not even in wraith form, I can guarantee you that. But Cappadocius, for all his insanity, was quite smart. And he knew that recruiting necromancers from all around the world, from the Maya, predating the Aztecs naturally, and maybe the Olmecs, other such groups, was important for understanding the cycle of life and death. After all these different cultures had their different takes on what death actually was. And so I am told by a reliable source known as the Capuchin that Poshli was beckoned from that place when he was very young indeed, brought over to Kaimakli and tutored by the eldest of the clan of death, given certain motes of wisdom, and then dropped back home to occasionally be ferried back again, conducting his own experiment in what is now Central America, while Japheth and Caius and Lazarus conducted theirs in North Africa, Europe, Anatolia, and such. Well, this is the story of how one vampire got himself destroyed, because the Harbingers showed absolutely no mercy. But does that validate their persecution of the rest of the Pisanob? I would argue not. Though the Pisanob certainly continued enacting certain rituals that insulted the Cappadocian memory, they were very fond of culling their own, as well as the mortals that they preyed upon. You can't find many bloodlines of the Giovanni or the Hecarta that were so keen on regimenting their herds as the Pisanob. Now, there's certain talk that the Pisanob were or are one of the drowned legacies of Central and South America. I would take that with a pinch of salt. I'm not even sure such things exist. But what is true is the same kind of systematic elimination of Cappadocians that occurred that so rent the clan is something the Pisanob just carried on doing, whether it was under Postli's auspices, whether it was due to their Aztec tradition, whether it was their love of blood sacrifice, their desire, their feeling that you could not truly understand death until you pulled someone's beating heart out of their chest and took a bite out of it. Well, that's bound to guarantee you some enemies in the end, isn't it? This is the Aztec civilization was not popular when it existed. It subjugated its neighbors. They didn't come to it because they loved it. They paid tribute to avoid it. I could well see Postli's hold in the Yucatan lasted as long as it did, out of fear, not out of love, and many vampires are the same. The Pisanob therefore knew that to secure their power they would have to do what Postli did, because they weren't suddenly going to be courting love and adoration and kindness and compassion from other vampires if they were anything like their elder. So they did as the master did, and they ultimately paid the consequences, because when the Harbingers descended upon them, the Pisanob were asking all and sundry, Camarilla, Anarch, even some Sabbat, help us. These monsters have emerged from the shroud, and if they don't stop, you'll be next. And you know what? Everyone looked at the Pisanob and what they'd been doing these last centuries and thought, no, you handle this. How many times have you heard that story when it comes to the Cappadocians in general? Isn't that interesting? How that kind of persecution is routinely allowed against the clan of death, a purging within the clan of death. And they're all right, a microcosm of it against the Pisanob, but as always, the Cappadocians go to the forming Camarilla. Please provide a sanctuary. This is a Cappadocian matter, says Hardstadt. Why don't you sort this out with the Giovanni? The Feast of Folly. Please, my Toreador, my Salubri, my Bruja brethren, the rest of my clan wishes to pen me away, entomb me, undead, until the blood runs dry in my veins. This sounds like a Cappadocian issue, says the Bruja, the Toreador, the Salubri. Yeah, the Pisanob are another example of the cyclical nature of death and rebirth, and I'm sure that the surviving Pisanob will be reborn into something more useful to the Hecarta, but right now they are a shattered fragment of what they used to be. Not so the Samdi. The Samdi, of course, have more than one name, and indeed so does the Baron himself, Baron Samedi, who for a time was confused with the Capuchin and another time was confused with Postli himself, but don't be mistaken, he is his own vampire and very difficult to pin down. I hate to sound horribly contemporary, but there is something very, very cool about the Samedi. The neonates love them. They look up to them. They love their independent spirit, how they can somehow be champions of autarky. They are not independent in the same way as the Hecarta are independent. They are not rebels in the same way as the Anarchs. They most certainly are not fighting for the Camarilla, and they definitely aren't interested in what the Sabbat are selling. And yet somehow they flourish. You see, the Samedi, perhaps unique among all bloodlines in this, our modern era, has mastered the art of the mercenary. I suppose closest to them would have been the Banu Hakim before they threw in with the Camarilla, and now the Samedi have been able to claim that valuable prize in their wake. The Samedi, where the Pisanob concentrate heavily on matters of the spirit. You see, their necromancy and their living temple, it focuses on the process of death, the flow of blood, the fact that death listens when blood flows, the bones remember when they are entombed. They were curators of Mictlan, shaping the soul's passage through the underworld, and in their duty, well, they had to practice a brutal discipline. The Samedi, however, they are decay. Or once human, of course, but now eternally rotting. Their bodies mirror the death they command. Their origins are perhaps even more mysterious than Poshley himself. You see, some whisper that they are a failed experiment of the Cappadocians. Some claim that Nosferatu blood was involved in that experiment. And before you throw that idea completely into the fire, just remember the gargoyles came from a mix of blood as well. Others claim they were cursed by Baron Samedi himself, and I'm not talking about the vampire here. I'm talking about the lower. I'm talking about the spirit entity, the god, if you prefer, that they had greatly transgressed, these vampires of Haiti and West Africa, that this lower punished them for stealing life from death, that once they were just simple Cappadocians, and they drew the ire of something far greater or more eldritch, perhaps, than an antediluvian or Methuselah, that this Baron Samedi was something that the Lupines would call a great spirit. Now, unlike the Pisanob, the Samdi revel in rot. They are solitary, they're secretive, they're obsessed with boundaries between soul and flesh. They're not interested in maintaining herds like the Pisanob. They're not farmers. They're not trying to build a civilization. They want what they can take because they know everything is temporary. They want riches because they want to spend, not because they want to build mansions. They symbolize the decay of life and undeath, and they know that everything will come to an end eventually, so go out partying. So the Samedi know how to have a good time. They know how to throw a party. They know how to turn a skull into a receptacle for vitae and drink from it. They are cool, as I said. They know how to dress. Their culture is very appealing. And somehow they do it all without causing grave offence to their kin. I don't know how they do it. It's not like they have a mastery of presence, but they dance between worlds. They ferry souls in ways no other kindred can. I once knew Samedi who asked me, "You want to know the dead?" he said. "Smell them. Carry them with you. Let your skin remember what your soul has forgotten." Isn't that beautiful, in a way? And the Samdi, as I say, they go from strength to strength, with the Banu Hakim now absorbed by the Camarilla, the followers of Set becoming the ministry and pinning their flag to the Anarchs. The Ravnos practically disappeared, and the Hecarta, we're so concerned with our own internal business and trying to secure ourselves against the Camarilla and Sabat should they turn on us. The Samdi, as almost a private military company of vampires, they do very, very well indeed. There is no contract they will not take, no task too grotesque for them. The Banu Hakim had standards. Not so for the Samedi. Their own necromantic discipline of Thanatosis, sometimes just thrown into the overall terminology of oblivion, which I dislike. I think there is more to it than a simple catchment. It is a fascinating skill that harkens back to how the Cappadocians used to focus on the degradation of the body as part of the soul, and the Samedi are masters of this. I think there's a lot you could learn about the Cappadocian past by studying the way the Samedi conduct themselves now, almost resembling how the Cappadocians were before their founder got so consumed with thought of consuming God and turning his clan against him. And then we get to the Lamiae, daughters of the Plague Bearer. You see, the Lamiae did not start out simply as vampires that found Lilith, and they did not start out as vampires bound to Cappadocius. They were a Lilith priesthood, but a mortal one. And there was a Cappadocian by the name of Lazarus. You've probably heard of him. He's still around in one form or another. He found this priestess of Lilith, and he found her enchanting. It wasn't simply an act of a man being attracted to a woman. This was a vampire being attracted to a mortal's understanding of divinity, of power. He witnessed her enact a ritual that should have been impossible for a mortal. She was not even a mage. I suppose Some Tremere would call her a hedge magician, but I think this is underselling it very much. She was a priestess, an oracle, someone with greater insight into the heavens and the past than any mortal I've ever met, quite frankly. A remarkable woman. Some believe she was Lilith herself, but I think that's a little hubris there. Lazarus embraced her, because he, of course, wanted her wisdom within the clan. He whispered... Oh, sorry. He whispered nothing. He was very proud of himself, very courageous in his way, the way he forced the embrace upon her. But you know how she took it? In her stride. She woke up into undeath, and when she did, seeing Lazarus there, proud of what he had done, she whispered something to him, something that horrified him, something that made him flee, and to this night, Lazarus will still never share space with a Lamiae. But the Lamiae themselves spread and grew, and according to their founder, who went by the name Lamia by this point, it was fated, it was destined that they be a part of the clan of death. Despite the fact they did not want this path, they knew that they would need to attach themselves to the rest of us. And so the Lamiae became almost our shepherds, our wardens, our guardians, our champions. The Lamiae became a force that few other vampires possessed. The Tzimisce had their ghoul families, and the Tremere had their gargoyles. We had a devoted bloodline, full-blooded vampires, without augmentation or mutation, who would die to serve the Cappadocians. Now, as it so happened, when the Cappadocians were on the receiving end of a Giovanni purge, you might recall, the Lamiae, they did throw themselves in the path of bullets and blades and bombs and fires and fangs as well. Very few Cappadocians ever stopped to ask why. Why? What use, what conceivable use, did it possibly serve the Lamiae to die in their droves? I'll tell you the secret, right here and right now. You see, Lamia, she was integral in the cursing of Augustus Giovanni, in the twisting of his blood, knowing that he would inevitably try to seize power from Cappadocius. It was the kiss of the Lamia, known as such, that the Giovanni were afflicted with, that many of us still suffer. But that wasn't the end of her curse. You see, every Lamia that fell made that curse even worse. Now, you might think, how can I make a painful kiss any more agonizing than it already is? It wasn't just the pain. It was the paranoia. It was the fear. It was the delusions of grandeur. You see, Lamia was interested, just as Cappadocius was, in understanding life and death, resurrection, godhood, divinity. And she saw Augustus as just another vessel for that ambition. And so she put that curse inside him, within his heart, to grow and grow, knowing that when she was destroyed and the other Lamiae were destroyed, it would all go to feed this swollen, rancid heart growing in Augustus Giovanni's chest, so that when he was finally destroyed himself, the vampire who diablerized him wouldn't have to be a Lamiae. They would become one. They would become Lamia herself. They might even become Lilith. Because that rancid heart wasn't just an organ. It was a seed that was growing in this garden of death. And the person who destroyed Augustus Giovanni has now consumed a seed ready to bloom, ready to change the creature who it now inhabits. So I ask you, as you are starting to see more Lamiae about now, serving the clan of death, who destroyed Augustus Giovanni? Who took his blood? Who diablerized him? Who now bears the seed of Lilith? Who will be her vessel for resurrection? It's all one very, very long plan, just as all things are in this jihad of ours. Sometimes plans fail. Sometimes they collapse. The Pisanob certainly didn't see their end coming. And sometimes you engineer your fall because you know that the second take, as the Lamiae are discovering, will be so much better than the first. Thank you very much for watching. Now, I say that. I say thank you very much for watching. I'm not done. You see, this video was requested by Thea, as I mentioned at the very beginning, and she was kind enough to pick up a copy of The World Below in hardcover, and that offer is still open. If people pick up a copy of The World Below, they get a copy in deluxe form via BackerKit or hard copy on DriveThruRPG. The links are below. You can request a video from me on MatthewDawkins.com. But that's not all. You see, this video is partly also created because I know people love these vampire videos, and then we want them to look at some of our other games, like Curseborn. You see, Curseborn, the Player's Guide, is currently on Kickstarter. Only just launched. There is a link to the game below. And you might be thinking, well, the core book isn't out yet. Not so. If you have backed Curseborn already on Kickstarter or BackerKit, or you do it now, in fact, you will receive the PDF for the Curseborn core book immediately. So not only am I linking The World Below if you want to request a video, I'm also linking the Curseborn core book if you want to order it right now and get it immediately, and I'm linking the Player's Guide, which has so many new options. And if you like this kind of material, the kind of videos I make, the kinds of horror stories I tell, then you're going to enjoy Curseborn. If you haven't checked it out already, this is Onyx Path going to create a horror game with no restrictions. It's our ability to exercise our creative freedom, and we love it if you check it out. So thank you very much for watching, and I will be seeing you next time.